registration. The time is 12:02 p.m. on Monday, the 15th of March, 2021. We are meeting virtually via Zoom to convene the committee's fourth public oversight hearing of 2021 to go until approximately 6 p.m. today. We will be hearing from government witnesses from both the Department of Aging and Community Living and the Department of Housing and Community Development. The purpose of today's hearing is to receive government witness testimony regarding the performance of these agencies for fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 2021 to date. I'd like to start by saying that these two agencies are among the most important under the jurisdiction of this committee when it comes to providing vital services for district residents coming out of COVID-19's pandemic public health emergency. DACL, or the Department on Aging and Community Living, is an agency that looks after our senior citizens. We must make sure that our seniors are carefully looked after coming out of the public health emergency. DHCD, or the Department of Housing and Community Development, has a say in how our federal relief funds will be distributed to help those who need it most. I just want to say that our leaders in the front of the committee today we will need to do the best job that we have ever done at any time right now. With federal support, we have an opportunity to bring the district back stronger than before. We have an opportunity to improve services to our seniors and create more long-term affordable solutions in our housing stock. And we must not squander this chance. I look forward to getting answers to important questions and having conversations about issues that have been raised outside of their setting as well as in the public domain for agencies before us today. At this time, I'll acknowledge I do not have colleagues that have joined me yet, but I do expect colleagues that will join a little later today. So I will now talk a little bit about the Department on Aging and Community Living. The mission is to advocate, plan, implement, and monitor programs in health, education, and social services for the elderly, to promote longevity, independence, dignity, and a choice for aging district residents and residents with disabilities and their caregivers, to protect the rights of older adults and their families and prevent their abuse, neglect, and exploitation, to uphold the core values of service excellence, respect, compassion, integrity, and accountability, and to lead efforts to strengthen service delivery and capacity by engaging community stakeholders and partners to leverage the resources that we have available. In partnership with community-based organizations across the district, DACL offers more than 40 free or low-cost programs. Let me repeat that. More than 40 free or low-cost programs to help district residents live boldly at any age, state, or ability. With the state of the pandemic, DACL shifted all of its programming online to adhere to physical distancing and limit the spread of COVID-19. The variety of these programs include community activities and events, nutrition, transportation services, healthcare, and insurance counseling, technology resources, caregiver support resources, and of course, adult protective services. DACL Senior Service Network serves approximately 16,000 clients in FY or fiscal year 19 and 17,000 in fiscal year 20. 11,000 clients thus far have been served during the first quarter of the fiscal year 21. Based on the responses to the pre-hearing questions to the committee posed by the committee, I can tell you that the department reports it has completed 724 home adaptation projects in FY20 and 310 thus far during this year, FY21. through the Safe at Home program. At this hearing, I'd like to examine how the DACL is serving the district's approximately 120,000 seniors to combat social isolation, assist senior villages that work in 13 neighborhoods across the city, develop the 10-year senior strategic plan, and address mental health needs and meet seniors where their needs are. I look forward to hearing from the department about how they plan to build on their successes so that programs can reach and impact more seniors, individuals with disabilities, and their caregivers who call DC home. Now we will turn
Councilmember, we have been joined by Councilmember Robert White.
Excuse me, please. Please don't cut me off when I'm trying to do a sentence. Thank you. Okay. We will now hear from our government witness, Director Newland, that I will have to swear in, but my staff is telling me we have been joined by other council members.
Yes.
Proceed.
Councilmember, we've been joined by Councilmember Robert White, who's a member of the committee.
Okay, all right. So Councilmember Robert White, you are in the nick of time to make an opening statement before we turn to our government witness. So you have the floor, Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Bonds, and do want to thank Director Newland and Director Donaldson for being here today. I'm looking forward to hearing from and speaking with them. And I do want to apologize that I will have to leave the hearing shortly, but I will be back later to ask Director Donaldson a few questions. And I want to first express how proud I am of the district's focus on affordable housing. However, as we all know, we are still far behind where we need to be. The district should be a place for residents of all incomes, a place where families don't leave because they can't afford to rent or buy homes that fit their expanding families. This should be a place where longtime residents don't live with the constant fear that they're on the brink of being pushed out. I don't think any of us know what to expect at the end of the public health emergency, but we do know that countless residents will face job and housing insecurity. I hope we are thinking creatively about how incoming federal funds can help us innovate and invest in affordable housing. The end of this public health emergency may be an opportunity for the district to acquire properties from struggling landlords, to reconsider office to residential conversions, which I've been pushing for us to think about more seriously since I joined the council, or purchase hotels that don't reopen. Today, I plan specifically to ask about COHEA and DOPA, as well as the Housing Production Trust Fund and the Property Acquisition and Development Division. I look forward to discussing how we can learn from past efforts that have fallen short and what more we need to do to achieve our housing goals. I also appreciate that we will be hearing from the Department on Aging and Community Living about the hard work they have done this year to keep our senior residents healthy, safe, and connected to the outside world, as many of them have stayed isolated this past year. We heard great testimony at the public witness hearing about DACL's and their partner organizations' COVID response. I want to especially highlight their successful efforts to transition in-person services to virtual or home delivery services. However, we have heard that we still have work to do to ensure that we are actively reaching out to connect all seniors to services, especially services that address food insecurity. I'm sure that Chairperson Bonds will ask questions to help us understand how we can support the agency in these efforts, and I do apologize that I will likely miss this portion of the hearing due to previously scheduled meetings. Now, however, if I am able to get in between those meetings, I will be here. But I do want to thank again DHCD and DACL. I'm looking forward to hearing your testimonies. And again, Chairperson Bonds, to you and your staff, thank you for holding this important hearing.
Thank you very much, Councilmember White, for your comments, and rest assured that we will, I'm sure, hear from the director of DACL as it relates to food insecurity, and particularly how it's affecting our seniors. So that part of your concern will be, we hope we'll get some answers. So thank you very much for joining us this morning, and we expect to start with the Department of Housing and Community Development and the trust fund a little later, maybe in a couple of hours. So thank you very much again. We now can bring forward our government witness. That's Director Newland, Laura Newland, that I will swear you in if you're here.
Good afternoon, I am here.
All right, okay, hello, how are you doing? I apologize, I only see 4 images, so I'm very limited. Staff is always having to direct me. Thank you very much for being here. Now, if you will raise your right hand. All right, do you swear and affirm that your testimony and any statements that you make before us today to be truthful and complete?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. And you may begin when you are ready.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chairperson Bonds, members of the Committee on Housing and Executive Administration, and community staff. My name is Laura Newland, and I'm the Director of the Department of Aging and Community Living, or DACL. I'm pleased to testify today on behalf of Mayor Muriel Bowser on the department's accomplishments during fiscal years 2020 and 2021 to date. Before I get started, I'd like to thank Mayor Bowser for her strong leadership during one of the most challenging times in our city's history. I'd also like to acknowledge the incredible staff at DACL. I'm so proud of my team and the way they've faced each day with dedication, commitment, and optimism for our community, never once refusing to step up and take on new tasks and to fill in where they were needed most. It was exactly 1 year ago today when we had to quickly close our offices, our in-person sites, and suspend all of our programming. During the public health emergency, or PHE, we lost the luxury of time. We've never asked our staff and community partners to adapt so quickly. Overnight, we had to adjust to new ways of accomplishing our work while figuring out life in a pandemic, which for many of us meant balancing caregiving with conference calls. At DACL, we serve seniors age 60 and older, adults with disabilities, and their caregivers. Our mandate includes upholding the core values of service, excellence, respect, compassion, integrity, and accountability. It also includes leading efforts to strengthen service delivery and capacity by engaging community stakeholders and partners to leverage resources. Madam Chair, at the start of the PHE, we often talked about what we would do when things returned to normal. But over the past 12 months, it's become clear to all of us that there is no going back to business as usual. This past year has been difficult for all of us and devastating for so many. We've seen COVID-19 hit our community hard. We've lost family members, friends, and neighbors. We've seen the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on our older residents and communities of color. We all stayed home to flatten the curve and keep each other safe. The risks of loneliness and isolation increased for all of us, and we've had to understand and meet our emotional risks just as much as our public health risks. The mayor has tasked all of us with making sure critical needs are met today while pushing forward to create stronger and more resilient communities for all of our residents tomorrow. While we may encounter some bumps in the road as we continue to face unprecedented challenges for our city, there's no doubt that we, together, will rise to the challenge as we have demonstrated this past year. Now more than ever, it's so important that we continue to move forward together. As my staff will tell you, and as you've heard from some of our community partners at the public testimony, sometimes that means doing things we've never been asked to do before. Whether it means rolling out new operational standards, taking extra time to call someone you may have never met, serving in new capacities to support citywide responses to the PHE, or quickly launching new programs, we have done so much, not because we've felt ready, but because it's what the community needed right now. DACL grantees and partners will agree that this past year has been focused on expansive possibilities, even when it seemed impossible. We know that supporting our community during these incredibly challenging times requires us to push ourselves and each other to be better than what we thought was possible. I'd like to tell you about some of the work we've already been able to accomplish over this past year. The PHE required us to respond quickly and adapt our programming to keep our community safe. At the same time, we were also able to launch several new initiatives to provide additional support to our older Washingtonians. This includes moving all dining site participants to home delivered meals and increasing meal delivery capacity to serve 6,600 district seniors. We've delivered more than 2 million meals during the past year. Launching the brand new Call and Talk program, providing seniors with friendly check-in calls and conversations. Supporting citywide efforts with staff dedicated to critical details, including the Contact Trace Force citywide hotline and the Board of Elections. Launching the Senior Stay Cool program, making sure that income eligible seniors could stay home and stay cool during heat emergencies with AC repairs and replacements. In 1 month, the program served nearly 100 seniors. Launching the Senior Technology Pilot Program, providing iPads and technical support to low-income, isolated seniors to allow them to stay connected to family, friends, healthcare, information, and activities. Hosting the first ever virtual Mayor's Annual Senior Symposium on Channel 16, which included a special meal delivery for more than 800 seniors. Meanwhile, we continue to maintain critical life-sustaining services such as Senior Med Express, providing transportation to essential medical services for district residents needing to get to their chemotherapy or dialysis appointments in the safest way possible. Our Safe at Home program also continued to operate, installing more than 1,000 in-home safety adaptations in FY20 and FY21 to date, while strictly adhering to health and safety guidance from DC Health. Due to the safety concerns during the PHE, DACL grantees could no longer provide many of the traditional programs. Still, to meet the needs of seniors and caregivers, DACL quickly repurposed grantee staffing to prevent social isolation and promote connectedness and well-being for seniors. In addition to repurposing staff, DACL grantees converted all in-person activities to virtual programming. However, we know that not everyone has access to or is connected to the technology required to participate in these virtual programs. To maintain these connections, we've asked DACL grantees conduct regular reassurance calls to participants. It involves a wellness check, reassurance, or socialization call for all seniors and caregivers, regardless of whether they're connected to other virtual wellness programming. Through this effort, we've reached more than 10,000 seniors during the past year. There's no question that the past year has been traumatic. However, we all need a reason to experience joy. DACL has partnered with the Humane Rescue Alliance to offer something we've never tried before, a visit with rescue animals via Zoom, and when it's safe to do so, in-person visits. In addition, we partnered with the DC Public Library to reach out to the community in all 8 wards to make Valentine's Day cards for 6,600 meal delivery clients, about 3 times as many as the previous year. This campaign is so special to us because we're not only able to brighten someone's day with a kind note, but we're also able to emphasize the importance of community to residents of all ages. These initiatives have also created new outlets to reach more residents who may not have known of DACL. Thanks to these partnerships, DACL has been able to earn more media coverage, highlighting the activities of the agency and expanding our outreach beyond our typical distribution channels. During the past year, DACL has been featured on ABC7, NBC4, Telemundo, Voice of America, WHUR, The Washington Post, The Washington Informer, and The Washingtonian. In addition to the earned media opportunities, DACL has continued to use every tool to reach as many residents as possible through paid media and virtual outreach. This included 2 large mass mailings distributed to more than 80,000 older residents in FY20. DACL launched its virtual events website, which receives more than 7,000 monthly visits. In addition, the Around Town website received more than 109,000 page visits in FY20 and connected 746 older residents to virtual and wellness activities from the comfort of their own homes. In FY21, we'll be launching a new citywide campaign targeting all district residents and emphasizing the importance of reaching out to older neighbors, potentially isolated seniors, adults with disabilities, and caregivers. Over the holidays, DACL engaged residents in a volunteer effort to call homebound seniors on Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Day. We coordinated more than 280 volunteer calls over the 3 holidays, and many of those relationships continue today. Through this initiative, we learned that there was a real desire in the community to reach out to isolated seniors, but people just weren't quite sure where to start. Recognizing this gap, we are developing a formal volunteer program as part of this campaign, and we look forward to rolling it out in the coming months. Madam Chair, I want to reiterate that the agency, the mayor, and the community we serve are not just aspiring to a return to normalcy. We're all committed to creating something better, more equitable, stronger, more resilient. While we've done a great job in the past year through our programs and support services, I believe that we have an opportunity to do even better by working together, thinking expansively, being creative, and most of all, continuing to listen to our community. The challenges of the pandemic have only deepened our commitment and ignited an even greater sense of urgency in reaching seniors who need us, no matter what. Given all of the great things we've been able to accomplish during this unprecedented time, I'm confident that we can do more than what we might have thought possible just a year ago. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I look forward to answering your questions at this time.
Thank you very much for that very informative testimony. And congratulations on the additional subscribers that you've identified to your programs. I just have a few questions from your testimony, and then I do have some prepared questions. And again, it's always good to see you and to know that you are taking care of one of our most important constituents. So thank you very much for all that you do. Tell me, you are indicating that you moved all dining site participants to home delivery meals. How does this number of serving now 6,600 relate to the numbers that you were serving when you had the so-called dining sites or conjugate meal sites?
And so on any given day before the public health emergency, we had anywhere from 1,200 to 1,500 individuals show up to any one of our 40+ dining sites. But throughout the course of the year, we had maybe about 2,500 or so unique people attend our dining sites, just not necessarily every day. So we converted anyone who wanted to receive a home delivered meal, who would normally go to a congregate site, to receiving a congregate meal. We've added more than 2,000 people outside of our normal service area during the pandemic to our meals program.
Very good. So 2,500 and 2,000 is 4,500. Where are the other 2,000 coming from? And you knew I would ask that.
Yes. So before the pandemic, we served about 2,400 people in our regular home delivered meal program.
Okay. All right. Now I get the numbers. Thank you very much. You also mentioned that finally we're talking about the call and talk program. You know, that's one of the concerns that I've had, and how you're providing the check-in conversations. What I'm very curious about is, how is that really going? And what I'm asking is, I think this is being done through your grantees, correct?
Actually, it's being done internally.
Internally. So this is the internal one.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, then I have to ask about the internal one. Is this the one where you're giving us numbers of the number of people that you're reaching? through those calls?
So Call and Talk is a separate program where somebody can call for regular conversation. And the DACL staff actually call seniors and have regular conversations. And through that program, we're serving about 150 or so seniors. The other program that I think you might be referring to is what we're calling socialization. And that's for all of our grantees. We have about 20 nonprofit providers, and across all of the 40 plus programs that you mentioned in your introduction, we have asked that our grantees call all of their participants, no matter what the program. And so through that program, we've called more than 10,000 seniors.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I understood which program was being managed from, as you say, central headquarters or office, and where and how the grantees are helping. Now, you mentioned 20 providers. Are those the formerly you referred to as the individuals that had clusters of the city in order to, like your lead, I think they're called the lead agencies. Is that what the 20 are, or are they other kinds of service providers as well?
They include the lead agencies. So we do have nonprofits that are responsible for certain wards of the city for overseeing the service delivery in specific wards. And then we also have nonprofit providers providing other services that aren't necessarily included in the quote unquote lead agency service areas.
So would this include the nonprofit providers, let's say, that provide transportation, let's say the meals program, those that provide the meals?
Yes, that's right. So it would be transportation. We fund various programs that are outside kind of our core services, and our core services, I would say, are generally considered case management, meals, and wellness, but we have quite a few wellness providers, for example, and throughout the city. And then we fund some other nonprofits who might do either ward-specific work or citywide work, but aren't attached to kind of the entire portfolio of services. So it's a complex network, but we work together across entities.
So these are external, non-government entities that are providing services to seniors and have some contractual arrangement with the agency.
Yes.
Your agency. Okay.
Yes.
All right. I want to make sure. So you mentioned in your call and talk that, I think it's call and talk, that your efforts have focused on the contact tracing force, citywide hotline, and the Board of Elections. Can you tell me what you did in those instances? Just curious.
Sure. So, as you know, there have been a lot of unforeseen needs over this past year that have really required citywide resources. And so the COVID hotline, for example, is something that was not staffed, obviously, before the public health emergency. And so that hotline is staffed through agency staff across the district. And some of DACL's team members are part of that hotline and have been from the beginning. The Board of Elections, this past cycle of elections, I think was very high profile on wanting to make sure that polling stations had enough volunteers and staff to operate appropriately. And so all agencies, look through their staffing and to see how many of their staff they could detail to various sites. And so DACL participated in that. And contact tracing is the same. Contact tracing is a big effort that the city is still involved in. And so a lot of my staff have been trained on these various hotlines or details in order to be able to contribute to these really critical citywide efforts to help us move through the pandemic.
Okay, so has your staff also participated in when we talk about Board of Elections, and that is actually securing or working at the polls, doing early voting or on election day?
Yes, so they worked the polls.
Okay, okay, all right. And is that all 75 members of your staff that were doing these tasks?
No, so with all the details, it's certainly not all of DACL staff. We still had to continue implementing our agency work. But, I think over the past year, we've done an incredible job of really making sure that not only was DACL's core mission fulfilled, but that we were able to leverage every possible resource we had available to us so that we could support the city in these citywide initiatives.
Okay, so approximately how many were engaged in these citywide initiatives from your staff?
So it depended on the initiative itself and also the timing of the request. So, for hotlines, we at one point, I think we've had probably around 15 or so of our staff that have been trained to be able to participate in that, and maybe not necessarily full-time every day. But, a lot of our staff are part-time and continue to participate in these citywide efforts.
Thank you. I just wanted the public to understand just the importance of these citywide efforts and how when the public has been able to participate, to understand that it is through the utilization of our workforce that they are able to get the benefits. So it was not a trick question. It was just really, I know you were thinking, I'm not thinking that you have 15 positions that you want to lose. I wasn't thinking that.
Oh, no. I know you were trying to get some more clarity and context for our listeners.
Yes, most definitely. Well, I really want to applaud you on the installation of the in-home safety adaptations. 1,000 is excellent. Of course, we have such a tremendous need. We could do many, many more. And that kind of leads me to what the law says. The law indicates that it can also be for railings outside on the porch to help people to get into the premises. And so I wondered if that is, how many of those type requests have you received, and how many have been accepted, and how many were rejected? Because I understand that it is customary for the agency to reject exterior work requests.
So I wouldn't say that it's customary to reject external adaptations. It certainly is in our list of acceptable adaptations, external or internal. It really is. It depends on the assessment from the occupational therapist. So we have a very long list that's quite extensive. And I'd be happy to share that with you if that wasn't part of our oversight responses. So the threshold isn't really about, is this an internal or external adaptation? It really is about what is the adaptation needed for the senior to live safely within their home. And the exterior is certainly considered part of that. I know there was one case in particular that your staff reached out to us about, and I think there was a misunderstanding about that particular case. It wasn't a rejection. They actually weren't connected to our normal intake process. So I think that was more of a connective failure rather than a programmatic, kind of a programmatic example of what wasn't included in Safe at Home.
So please repeat for the public, what is the process that they must follow to qualify and perhaps get this service?
So anyone who's interested in Safe at Home can give us a call at 202-724-5626. We have someone answering that Monday through Friday during normal business hours. And if you're interested in Safe at Home, the person answering will walk you through what the general requirements are. There's an income requirement, and then connect with our grant funded partner that will ask some questions about falls risks and things like that, what people might be interested in, and then start that process. So we definitely want to encourage people to call if they're interested. I think this is a fantastic program that really, if we look in other jurisdictions, as you know, Councilmember, this really is nothing that matches the level of investment that DC makes in a program like this.
It is a great program. I've heard from so many persons who have been able to take advantage of it, and I had no idea the popularity of it. So you're right. I'm sure you're receiving accolades all the time. This leads me to asking about the single family rehab, that program, the single home program, where at one time we were able to replace roofs, electrical systems, in other words, major renovation repairs to homes. Are we still doing that, or is that the program that's now relegated to expenditures of no more than $16,000?
So that program has been operated by the Department of Housing and Community Development. So I defer to my colleague, Director Donaldson, on the specifics of that program. I know it is still operating, and they've made some changes over the years to make it more accessible for our residents. And it is a really fantastic program. And I think probably with, as you know, a much wider set of things that could be repaired in the home.
Yes, and I know that many seniors attempt to take advantage of it, and they become very concerned because of the time frame. And I wondered, time frame from application to actual reality, sometimes more than 2 years. And so I wondered if you are receiving any complaints from the senior community regarding this program and how ineffective it is for them when they need it.
You know, I haven't heard many complaints, and I will tell you that I personally have not received complaints about single family rehab. I'd have to talk to my team. Usually any kind of complaints I do eventually hear about. So what I can say is that I am not aware of that, but we of course are, you know, Director Donaldson and I do talk occasionally and do talk about how we can better work together. And we do make some referrals from our own Safe at Home program to single family rehab for some of the projects that are more extensive that our program can't cover.
Okay, when you speak of having a very good channel of communication with the Department of Housing and Community Development, this is just wondering, what are the complaints or concerns that you hear from seniors as it relates to continuing in an affordable housing unit? As an example, do you get those kinds of concerns periodically, or is it primarily transportation, food, mobility, you know, those kinds of issues, or health?
Yeah, well, I mean, you just listed it all. And we have conversations with seniors about everything that touches their lives, about, how they'd like to make their lives better, how, the different things that we as an agency and we as a city can do to be supportive and making sure seniors age well here in the district. So, I think affordable housing is one of those areas where it really doesn't matter how old you are. In DC, we know that we need more affordable housing. So the city has made significant strides over the past several years. This has been something that Mayor Bowser has really focused on, to push for more affordable housing, and not just general affordable housing, but for seniors. And so we are seeing that, and DHCD has invested quite a bit over Mayor Bowser's tenure in affordable senior housing throughout the district.
Okay, well, if you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about senior affordable housing. I'm concerned. I'm concerned because I'm not sure that we have a clear understanding as to what seniors prefer. And perhaps in your information that comes into your agency, you might have some insight for us. Whether or not seniors prefer to live in a community with other age groups, families, or do they prefer to be kind of in their own little neighborhood, so to speak, senior exclusive. Do seniors take well to a 6 or 11-story apartment building with elevators? Do they prefer to be maybe duplexes, 2 levels, or maybe even ranch style, single level? I don't think that we've ever really explored that with our senior community, and wondered if you have received any comments in those areas, and if you think it would be a help to query the senior community, persons 60 and older, as it relates to what their preferences are.
So as you know, I'm a big believer in asking seniors what they want. We've had a lot of conversations, and what I'll say is that there's a lot of variety and a lot of diversity within our senior population. And so for some of our folks, certainly people are looking for more apartment living. It's a little bit less work that you have to do in maintenance. We have a lot of seniors who are in homes and they never want to leave their homes. And so, I think there is definitely a wide range, and the affordable housing investments that we see here in the district is kind of reflects that. So from programs like Safe at Home, which really focus on keeping seniors in their home, the mayor will often say the best affordable senior housing is the housing that seniors are already in. So the range starting there to investing in affordable senior projects like Walter Reed, for example, and other complexes throughout the city.
Okay. All right. Is there a requirement for your grant recipients, particularly the lead agencies, to conduct these regular reassurances calls to participants? I mean, is there some regularity in which that must be done, or you're expecting it to be done? Of course you can't mandate it.
Yes, so we do have general guidelines for these calls. We have essentially kind of a baseline standard, but of course, seniors are different. And so it really is driven by senior preference. And the only thing that I would say is that, if a senior said within the first month of the pandemic, hey, I'm okay, I don't need any calls, then of course, I think at least in the first month of the pandemic, I'll speak for myself. I thought that it would be over in a couple of weeks, right? We just had no understanding of what would actually happen over the past year. It's been so unpredictable. And so, if a senior says, hey, I don't need phone calls, or I only need check-ins once every couple of weeks or once a month, then that's fine with us. It really should be driven by what seniors are identifying as wanting, and the baseline for us is for an average senior would be about once a week, just checking in and saying, hey, how are you doing? And to also just remind seniors that they're not alone, that, they have someone who's thinking about them on a regular basis. So that's generally it. I would say it's a wide range depending on the senior need and what the senior wants.
Okay. So if I am one of your agencies, I would sort of take my 2,000 seniors that have received some programming through my agency and reach out to that base, and maybe on a monthly basis let you know how many, and maybe identify some additional needs that I can't provide. Is that kind of descriptive of how it works?
Yeah, I know, again, because we have such a wide range of experience here in DC, the original intent was just to say, hey, look, we're not in person anymore. We have a lot of seniors, as you know, who pre the public health emergency, they would come to one of our sites every day. You've been to one of our 6 senior wellness centers, and we had quite a few people across those sites who that was what they did during the day. And so our main concern really, once the public health emergency was announced and we started closing down those sites, was, I think it was a big shock for all of us to go from just what we had taken for granted as normal life, and then all of a sudden to say, please stay home. It's for your safety and it's for others' safety. And so the calls were originally just to say, hey, look, you're not alone in this. We'll get through this together. And then as kind of things progressed, it became more of like, hey, did you know about our wellness activities? If you're online, do you need help getting online? Some of those things where it's still a public health emergency, but the crisis part is not what we're in right now. And so it really is about how do we maintain in our current posture, and how do we start planning for whatever the next is. And part of that planning is really being able to listen, right? And so part of that is understanding and actually talking to people and hearing what it is that people are asking for or might want moving forward. So the calls really achieve all of that for us. But the main purpose of the call was to decrease loneliness and isolation. That was the number one concern I think that all of us had once we realized that we had to end in-person services. And then with every kind of progressive kind of set of information we had about COVID-19, it became more and more clear to us that no matter what else we were doing or planning, we had to prioritize our core services, which meant how do we end isolation and decrease loneliness in our community? And how do we make sure that seniors have access to basic needs like food? So we were able to really focus on those two things.
Thank you for that comment. I guess I'm thinking I'm thinking about how we spend our resources. I have to think about that. I know that we are, as a jurisdiction, we're entitled to a tremendous windfall, so to speak, one-time windfall in federal dollars, but this infusion will be one time. And we will have to move forward into the future, supporting ourselves as we have been doing as a community. And so I'm trying to understand where we should put more resources, as opposed to where we should maybe, look forward to fewer resources being allocated. And so this is kind of important realm, because the number of the senior person 60 and older, which is in my category. You're not there yet.
Not yet, but we're all working towards that.
Yes, we are, most definitely. But seriously, because of the increase on a minute by minute basis, I just want to make sure that we have the resources that we need. And at least through what I can do at the committee level. So I'm very curious as to how all of this shakes out, and whether or not there is a real need for more communicators, persons who can make these calls, persons who can, through conversation, identify maybe 5 others that could benefit from a call. But Mary Smith, whom I'm speaking with, knows their number and knows their situation and will share with me. So I too, as a representative of the government, can be in touch. So that's kind of like where I am, excuse me, on this matter. And particularly concerned that I know a few years ago, Board of Elections was able to provide the 97,000 names and I guess phone numbers. And I think there was some maybe issue with phone numbers, but as someone who has used the robocall, I know that, you just go for it, as long as your message is with clarity and has a good purpose. I think it's always, pretty well received. And so I just want to encourage that, we do use that list. And of course, it's updated periodically, certainly after each, campaign season. So I think that's probably one of the best ways for us to reach individuals. And of course, I would imagine many of the health plans, if they were to reach out to their lists, I'm sure they don't share the list with anyone, but if they were to reach out, that might be another way. I guess when all is said and done, and I think about the population of the district, and I think about how we are going to continue to grow, because everyone finds the District of Columbia very desirable, very desirable. And so persons who've been here long term, we do not want to lose them. And so we want to hold on to as many as we can. And so having the services that your agency specifically, sort of nails down are very, very important to that. So I just want to make sure that whatever the needs are that you can share with us, that we are cognizant of it and will do something about it. So I just wanted to share that with you. You mentioned here that you actually, a couple of things, that you coordinated more than 280 volunteer calls over the holidays and what have you. Is this that call talking? Is that group that you're speaking of?
It was a combination. So we worked with our grantees to identify seniors who might be by themselves over the holidays for one reason or another. And so we paired community volunteers who had reached out to us and said, hey, we'd love to connect to seniors in our community. What should we do? And so that was our first foray into using community volunteers to help us reach seniors and make a different kind of connection. I think we can all agree that there's something different about hearing from a community member versus a service provider. And so, I think we need to reach people in all sorts of different ways. And, when we think about seniors in our community, truly they are our neighbors and friends. They're not a population of folks that we just need to, service and make sure they're fed and watered, right? Seniors are people. And so we are really working hard to not just build, but strengthen those community ties. And so you'll see us expanding that kind of programming in this year because it was very successful, both on the volunteer side and on the senior side. And some of those relationships are still ongoing from the holiday season. And so, I think we will look to build on those relationships moving forward.
Oh, I think that's a very good goal. And if you would make sure to keep your the data so that you have, the frequency and the numbers that you're reaching, I think that helps us justify our expenditures. I really believe that much of government service can be analyzed, but I think you can't analyze it unless you have some planned outcomes. And so I'm just suggesting the volume and the numbers of contacts that we reach could be very beneficial. And I hope that you'll, pay, a lot of attention to that, keeping that information.
We agree.
Your community volunteers, I'm also wondering if the community volunteers, there's a way for the community volunteers to work across the city. For instance, most of the small villages have a good, strong core of volunteers, but the larger village, particularly the one located in services 7 and 8, it has very few volunteers. And I wondered if there's some way for there to be some cross-fertilization. I mean, I know that they are outside of the government domain per se, but nevertheless, they are a part of our aging family of providers. So I wondered if that was possible.
Yeah, I definitely think that's possible. And I would say over this past year, DACL's relationship with the villages has really gotten stronger. And, if you think about the village model, which is a hyper local neighborhood based connecting essentially, your next door neighbor or your friends or, within this specific area, you can see why it would be a particularly interesting model during the time of the pandemic of making sure, you're doing regular check-ins and things like that. The conversations that we've had with the villages over the past several months, it really has been about exactly this. How do we take this model and how do we grow it so that it's not just about these areas where a village is already in place, and how can we expand some of the resources in areas that need additional resources? So I think one great example is with the vaccination registration that we had the villages volunteer to help seniors across the city sign up for vaccination appointments, regardless of where they lived in DC. And so there definitely are ways that I think we can do a better job of using some of those resources while still keeping in mind, of course, the unique nature of each village.
Yes, I really like that. I was certainly in contact with them quite a bit and somewhat helpful in that process. So now I'm going to go to my prepared questions. All right. I wanted you to identify the number of vacancies that you have and how long the vacancies have been in existence.
Let me see. I would tell you, I don't know that off the top of my head, but I feel like that was in that might have been part of our oversight response.
I'm pretty sure. So I'll just refer to
Okay.
what you have prepared. The same as your agency total budget. That has changed from the original allocation. Am I correct?
For fiscal year 21.
For
20.
fiscal year, yeah, 21. I think down 200,000, no?
So yes, it might have changed in fiscal year 21, but not for our core service programs. So what you would see is that we were able to identify funds because the agency is on a full remote telework status right now. And so there was some savings that we found within the agency administration that we were able to identify for the mayor's team to be able to reinvest in other areas. But that did not hit any of the funds that were allocated to go out into the community.
Okay, and I know that you didn't provide the full 15 million, let's say, for the building blocks program or something like that. That's a new program, so I reference it. But I thought you did contribute a little something to
a little bit, yes. And I will say that in addition to kind of the DACL contribution in its administrative savings, you'll also see actually a pretty sharp increase of funds allocated for meals, for example. And so at the same time that we've identified administrative savings, we've been working with the mayor's team to identify additional funds to come into our agencies to serve more seniors.
Okay, well, let's talk about food. I checked to see if my colleague, Councilmember White, was able to be with us now, and he is not. And I promised that we would talk a little bit about the meals and how the meals program is going. And what is your take on this article that was published and a couple of reports that indicate that I know we serve fewer meals through the schools than we were when the schools were open. You know, during the virtual time, we've been serving fewer meals. And I would imagine that certainly has an effect on the whole household. And we have so many households that are managed through our seniors, grandparents. And so I wondered if that is an area that you are familiar with.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. We do have a lot of grandparent-led households here in DC. We as a city are definitely concerned about what does it mean when kids are learning remotely. And it's not just the learning, as the mayor has pointed out, schools are often the entryway to really critical services like meals. And so, what I would say is that I think the city has done an incredibly good job of coming up with emergency services like food in different variety of ways, supporting nonprofits who are doing a lot of that work. We are not the only agency where you would see increases of financial investment in food resources to our community. You could see that across many different agencies and across many different nonprofits in DC. So definitely it has been a concern that we have addressed financial resources to, and will continue to do so moving forward. But one of the reasons why we wanted to look at expanding our outreach for seniors in the community was precisely to address that concern, which is, we think that seniors who might have been okay pre-public health emergency might become more food insecure as a result of the public health emergency, whether that's because of job or because they had kids who might otherwise be eating at school and now are eating at home. And so we are all kind of collectively thinking about that together as a district agency.
So as you're thinking about that, I guess I'm looking at your response to question 9A, B, and it really is a listing of your budgets and what you have in the way of an approved budget, revised budget, and actual spending through FY now. And so I'm trying to understand the report that indicates that there's less food available and being disseminated, in general. And this that speaks to 9440 nutrition supplements, 9540 and 9550, and then home delivered meals, 9530, and then 9520, that whole category of 9500 nutrition. And when we look at that, we have over 9.4 million, but to date, we've only spent 2 million. And I'm just, tell me how we're going to spend the rest, given that we are fast approaching 6 months of this fiscal year. And that's what I was trying to understand about food.
So I believe these numbers are reflecting quarter 1 spending. So I do realize that
they are. Yes, that is true.
March. But so if you look at those numbers from a quarter perspective, and then also, we had some federal funds that rolled over into this fiscal year from FY20, and then. This is certainly not a reflection of how much DACL will end up spending in fiscal year 21. So just as a, let me see here, as a comparison, you can see for fiscal year 20, for half a year, that what we actually ended up spending was significantly more than what we budgeted, and that's a reflection of the half year of the pandemic. And so depending on how long the public health emergency ends, we are projecting and working with the mayor's team on how much of additional funds we need to support our meals budget because of how many more people we are serving.
Okay, so you're saying then for this budget I'm looking at now, 9,500 nutrition, it indicates that currently extracting the first 3 months, that there is a $7.4 million remaining to be spent. And you're saying that that amount somehow is, you can spend it based on what you did in FY20. How much did you spend in FY20 in total?
So I'm happy to provide more details about what we plan on at our current rates of spending. But for example, if you look at 9550, which is commodity and farmers market, that is a program that we actually shift over to DC Health. And so that 410,000 spending is going to be spent through DC Health and not through us. So, we can actually provide very detailed information about monthly food expenditures, but in FY20, we spent $13.4 million in food in FY20. So that was almost 100% of the budget, plus additional federal funds, plus some additional local funds that was added in that calculation. In this year, and I know this because we often have conversations with the mayor's budget team about this particular line, we are again looking at a need for additional funding to supplement our baseline funding for food. But again, I'm not sure what is included or not in this number, but we have spent well over $6 million already in fiscal year 21 in meals.
Okay. This came from
I'm
your
happy to
office.
follow up with you on
Yes, you
what
do.
that difference is.
And I mean, I'm not trying to do a catch you. I'm just simply saying that when we get to the budget, because we have or will have federal dollars that will come into play in some of the agencies, and I think in all of the agencies in our committee, or most of them. I don't want to wait until we get to
Sure.
that and we have to try to sort through this. I just want to understand now, what are we doing? What is the need so that there can be some anticipation? Because as I would like to gobble up all that we can, each of my colleagues is expecting to gobble up all that they can. And so just sort of getting a preview and having these kind of general discussions, which is my style, to, understand what we're trying to accomplish and what our, it's very helpful to me. So any light that you can shed on that would be very, very helpful, quite honestly. And as you're talking about senior villages and supportive residential services, those kinds of external kind of activities, if you would also help me understand what the real need is based on what you, I guess, really what you spent in 19, because 20, you had, like you said, so much was virtual. So we can understand, how do we really have a budget that really works based on the need for service delivery?
Okay.
As it relates to transportation, is most of the money that we spend on transportation, is that local dollars or federal dollars?
It's a mix of local and federal dollars.
Okay. Well, we can have that same kind of conversation now, but we won't. Can you just remind the public of the different modes of transportation that are options for our seniors?
Sure. So through DACL, we offer a program called MedExpress, which is for life-saving medical appointments and benefits connection. So in order to access that program, you can give us a call. Again, that number is 202-724-5626. If you are a Medicaid recipient, you can receive free trips to doctor's appointments or to the hospital through Medicaid. I don't know that number off the top of my head, but I just want everyone to remember our number, because if you call our number at 202-724-5626, my staff can connect you to the other forms of transportation that you might be eligible for. There's a program called the Transport DC, which is through the Department of For-Hire Vehicles, where you can, if you are a Metro Access customer, you can sign up for $5 taxi cab rides for medical trips, employment, and things like that. We also have, as a city, so, I think it's, there are multiple things that you can access as a senior. So Transport DC is connected to Metro Access, but Metro Access is also a separate program that you could be eligible for. And then we also at DACL operate a small program called Connector Card, which is a debit card program that's based on a sliding scale that you can use on any form of transportation. So the focus that we really have is primarily to make sure that seniors are going to their life-saving and life-sustaining medical trips as an agency, and then we work in connecting seniors to other transportation options that might be available to them.
Okay, I think it's important to remind seniors that, it is medical appointments that you can do, etc. But also it's about, community living. You can go to the grocery store. You can, when the theater opens, you can go to a movie. In other words, it's to transport seniors effectively. Am I correct? Is that how we have these systems in place?
So for Transport DC, for example, the $5 taxi cab ride, yes, that could be for anything. For Metro Access, the same thing. If it's a Medicaid funded program or transportation option, then it is just for Medicaid appointments. And for our program in particular, our Med Express program, it is focused on medical trips and benefits. So if you need to apply to SNAP, for example, whenever you have to do that in person, which you don't have to do right now, but once the in-person requirement is activated again, you can use our program to renew benefits.
Okay, but the Connect card would access any of the systems, is that correct?
Yes, the connector card would access any of those systems.
All right. So I'm hoping that seniors are listening and will think about that Connect card, which can be very helpful. Home health aides. Tell me, how are we doing with home health aides? That program that's so vital and I hear a lot about, I'll just say.
So, like many of the medically related supports that we have in DC, the primary payer of home health in DC is from Medicaid. And DC has, I think, as you know, one of the most kind of expansive healthcare coverages systems in the country. And so if you are receiving Medicaid, you might be eligible for in-home services depending on what the assessment, what your assessment says. So you can do that through either what we call the state plan, the baseline Medicaid service, or through what we consider waiver services. This is for people who would otherwise be in a nursing facility, but if they had the right services and supports in the community, that they'd be able to live in the community safely. So we have a team that specifically works with seniors to apply for waiver services and other long-term service and supports here in DC through Medicaid. And then we also have a very limited in-home support service program that's offered through our agency. And this is for people who need very limited support, so only up to 6 hours a week, for things that would help them remain in the community safely.
Okay, I guess I should have warned you that I would put the programs on Showcase, because I think hopefully, because we're virtual and have been virtual for so long, that many more individuals might be listening and may glean some information from this session that they can use. I wanted to tell me, what is the agency doing as it relates to Alzheimer's care?
So, we have a few different things, and I will say that the public health emergency has definitely, I think, been challenging, especially in this area. We haven't talked about caregivers yet, but I definitely, we worry about caregivers because there's not a whole lot of respite that's been available to them over the past year. I worry about caregivers on my staff, and I worry about caregivers who are living in the community, taking care of their loved ones. So we fund a few different adult day programs in DC, and that's primarily taking care of people who suffer from Alzheimer's or other related dementias. And so we have a couple different sites that are operating now in person. And so if people are interested, they can give us a call and see if they're see what the availability is. We have a program that's operated by Iona in Ward 3 and another program that Iona opened in Ward 8 as well. A lot of our programming now is online, and so there are online support groups, there are telephone supports, and we'll be continuing to work with the caregiver community and figuring out how do we slowly kind of move into the next phase of reopen in a way that provides them the much needed support. And then of course, through Medicaid, there's a wide range of services that might be available to somebody as well. And even if someone doesn't qualify for Medicaid, they again might still qualify for the waiver depending on the level of care that is needed for the person.
Ms. Miller, may I just ask, is there a need and a way in which we in community could actually increase the number of caregivers? You know, sort of like a surrogate caregiver, because this issue of needing a break must be extreme at this point. Is that something that we should be pushing, maybe UDC or maybe Georgetown, Catholic University, Trinity University, to prepare, to offer the training so that we can have more caregivers?
Yes, I know there definitely is a concern about whether or not our workforce is ready for our aging population. And so, you know, DACL is definitely willing to have a conversation about how can we be supportive. You know, I think the positive thing is that just during my tenure, which is just been a few years, we've seen an increased interest in the university community around gerontology and aging as an academic pursuit. So we have new programs now at Georgetown and George Washington joining the gerontology program at Howard University. We do work with UDC on a small volunteer program that provides respite through a volunteer program. And, you know, I think you're right that the time is probably good to think about, can we expand something like that? Can we think about how we can do more with a volunteer concept? And I would also say that many of our villages do that kind of work, and maybe they don't call it respite work, but that's what a lot of their volunteer program is.
I think that's an area we need to move in. From what knowledge I have received by way of clients that are receiving the service, that is, it's sorely needed to have more people with the ability to actually go into homes and give a regular care provider maybe 2-hour break, you know.
Right.
So I just thought that, and it sounds like it's something that could be a training program, I ideally located through a community college setting. So I was very curious about that. I guess the whole home care aid process could lend itself to this as well. An opportunity to have training through a community college environment. Would you begin to look into that and get back to us, let's say in May or June, as to your findings as to the possibility of having that kind of curriculum available?
We'd be happy to look into it and work with our partners at DC Health. DC Health is the agency that provides the regulatory oversight
Yes.
for nursing and home health.
Okay. All right. When you review the, when you're exercising the options or the option years and contracts, do you review the eligibility requirements for each grantee? You do?
Yes, for every continuation, for every new application or continuation application, we review each application separately and work with every grantee and making sure our programmatic needs will be able to be met.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the delivery, the meals delivery process that we have. Because I think you experienced some changes that you had to make during the pandemic. Can you define those changes and why they were necessary?
Sure. Our program, like I mentioned the beginning of the hearing, our program was maybe about a third, close to a third of what our current program is. So, we have two different meal providers for our home delivered meals program. One is a provider that provides a pack of 14 meals once every 2 weeks. We served about 2,000 people prior to the pandemic through that program. Our other program was a combination of hot and cold meals, and we used a provider that was here for about 350 to 400 people. When the public health emergency was announced, because it had such wide-ranging effects, our national provider that we were using for the 2,000 group did not have capacity to expand to include more people. We had a very urgent need for immediate expansion to include not just our congregate meal clients, but seniors who were now needing to be added to our program as a result of the public health emergency. So we worked with our meal provider. Our current meal provider is Dutch Mill, and we worked with them for, we continue working with them to expand basically that program that served 350 or so seniors to now more than 4,000 seniors over a very quick period of time. And so we were able to do that with them. And then as part of the delivery process, of course, that also had to grow significantly, whereas we were again delivering for about 350 or so seniors. Now we had to deliver to 4,000, 4,500 seniors within this program, which is a huge increase. And so we continue to work with Seabury Resources for the Aging, which provided the transportation for the base program, which is about 350 or so people. And we were able to expand their capacity, but we also had to bring in a different provider to help meet the transportation needs. And so we worked with Yellow Cab to provide transportation as well. So together we were able to provide the transportation for the additional 4,500 or so seniors who needed to be added to our delivery program.
And so the 2,000 that are delivered, what is it, 14-day meal service, who delivers that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
I'm asking what is the delivery system for the 2,000 meals that have been ongoing, that are delivered every 2 weeks, I guess 14 days, every 2 weeks?
So that provider is Mom's Meals. That's a national provider. So we are not the only jurisdiction that they provide meals to.
Okay. And they continue to do the 2,000, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and to that, you've added the approximately 4,500, which Dutch Meal is preparing the food, and Seaberry and Yellow Cab do the deliveries.
That's
I
right.
think we've seen in the media some of the pictures of
Yes.
food being loaded. Okay, just want to,
And
put it in perspective.
And I take walks in my neighborhood now as part of my my new pandemic routine. And I've seen Mom's Meals trucks delivering, and I've seen Seaberry, and I've seen Yellow Cab delivering. So we definitely have all the providers, and you might be seeing one or all of them if you're out and safely exercising and enjoying the outdoors.
Very, very, very good. Very savvy. All right. Can you tell me the other large contractors, Great American Core and Per Food for Meals? Who are they?
So that is, I'm going to have to double check with my team, but I think Mom's Meals is the
Great American Core
for Pure Foods, and Great America, I believe, is the corporate name for Dutch Mill.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Are the contracts made publicly available for these meal services? We ran into a concern asked by a constituent. They wanted to know.
We can certainly make them available. I believe we just had approval through the council process recently for those contracts. And so I do want to be clear that we don't control the contractual process. We work with our partners at the Office of Contract and Procurement and follow the strict district guidelines on this process. We are not the experts on contracting or procuring for these services.
All right. And any documentation is always available through the FOIA process.
That's right.
Yeah. How does the agency track the performance of your grantees? Any of your contracts that are out there? Is there a protocol in particular, or is it done annually? Is it done semi-annually? Are there reports?
If you talk to some of our grantees, they'll tell you we do it too much throughout the year. So we have a team of analysts who actually provide program monitoring throughout the year. There's a process before the fiscal year starts that is essentially a negotiation agreement of what's going to happen the following year. We have terms in agreement, we have a grants policy manual, and so all of our grantees sign attesting to kind of following the standards that are laid out. Throughout the year, every month, they submit invoices to us for costs. And so as part of that invoicing process, there is also an accountability process of the work that has been done for that period of time that they're asking for reimbursements. This past year, I think, has been pretty unique. And so there have been a lot of changes over the past year that I think are pretty unusual. But, just as an example, over the past year, I think they received many more memos from us than they normally would about changes and updates to services, to how you bill and all those kinds of things. So definitely there's a constant line of communication. When the pandemic first started, we held weekly calls with them. Now the calls are bi-weekly or monthly, depending on what's happening. But we always err on the side of over communication, I would say, because we want to make sure that grantees are clear about what the expectations are, especially in a fast moving environment, and to give them an opportunity to actually respond to what we were asking of them as well. And so, we definitely have open communication as well as very specific standards that they are aware of, that they agree to every year, no matter how long they've been grantees with us. And if you look at our response to question 88, you will see more specifics of what we have done over the past fiscal year 20, and so far in fiscal year 21. And so it's both the operational side, and then also working internally with our grant monitors to do that. This year has been different. Normally it would be unannounced site visits. This past year has been unannounced virtual visits. So dropping into programming and paying attention to who's attending and how it goes and things like that. So we have a lot of different tools that we use to monitor quality.
Let me ask you, do you have any plans for actually providing commodities, food commodities, as you're providing the meals, or would that go to a different population that perhaps takes advantage of your programming, other programming activities, but might have a need for food? I'm trying to deal with this issue of somehow there's a sense that we don't have enough food in the city for the people that need it. And how do we get it to them?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, and a very challenging one. If you look at DC, I think it's almost what I would say an embarrassment of riches of nonprofit support. And then, of course, a very robust local government that is supportive of, many things that other jurisdictions are not so supportive of, as you know. So one of the great things about having, both the nonprofits and local government engaged in something like ending hunger is that there are many different ways that people can access services. I think one of the downsides is that we don't always know how many services someone is accessing or in what ways, right? So it's then very hard, I think, to gauge, well, is this person getting everything that they need through this combination? So what we do with it, what we have done over the past year is not only providing our meals program and expanding that delivery system, but we continue to work with DC Health. And DC Health operates the commodities program. So that's for very low income seniors. They get a box of groceries once a month. And then in the summer, they'll also do farmers market coupons. We've expanded our food support by working with a nonprofit called We Are Family and leveraging their community support and funding grocery bags that they deliver once a month through their volunteer program. And then we also are working on a new partnership with Mary Center called Eat Well, Live Better, where we are connecting with, it will eventually be up to 500 low-income seniors, and working with Mary Center to connect health with nutrition. And Mary Center will be providing those clients with nutritious boxes of food through that program, as well as regular medical checks. So, we agree there are definitely, we need to be more creative in how we are providing supports. And nutrition, of course, is really linked to better health outcomes. And so we as a city are very keen on trying to figure out how can we increase not just nutrition education, but nutrition access as part of our way of addressing health inequities. And so, we will continue to do that this year and in the future.
I think that's very important. And I think you hit on the magic potion, and that is the eat well, live better. Because it's being administered through a sort of like a health provider, and given that about 95% of the city is in a health program, one or the other, maybe we should be looking to our health programs to help us get the food where it needs to be. So I would encourage you to do more in that arena. I think it will pay off for us as a community. I want to ask you about some of the favorite programs, senior wellness centers. What's going on? Are they, as it relates to the capital improvements we were doing, I think in 2 locations? How are we coming? Will they be ready? I know one of the centers indicated they had 999 people signed up, and they were saying they needed a triple decker to handle that volume. So I'm asking, where are we with trying to provide for those who love this? This is a very popular program.
Yes, as senior wellness centers, I think are definitely one of our most popular programs that we provide throughout the city. You're right, we had capital expansions scheduled for Model Cities in Ward 5 and Congress Heights in Ward 8. They are moving along. I will say that the pandemic did delay the progress, especially in the beginning. All of the capital projects were delayed, but we have pushed forward, and we're working with our partners at the Department of General Services to make sure that we are moving forward on this, because we agree when we reopen, we would like the construction to be as complete as possible. So we're expecting that construction is going to be starting very soon. And we continue to work with the task forces that are set up in Ward 5 and Ward 8, because the seniors have been very intimately involved in this process from the beginning.
Thank you. And can we please make sure that the bathroom stalls for relegated, I guess, to women in particular, are a little wider for the wheelchairs and the walkers, and that we have an ample number? I think at one location we had more male than female, and in the District of Columbia, the population is just the reverse, more female than male. And I think, in all fairness, we need to pay attention to that. So it's not an office, an old 1980s office building. This is a 2020-21 facility for our seniors. And so please pay attention to that and make sure we have an ample number of appropriate stalls and bathrooms attended to appropriately.
Yes. And we will make sure that there will be accessible toilets in all of our wellness centers.
Okay, and fewer bidets and more. Yes, yes, and I'm available to take a look whenever I can, whenever it can be scheduled, and to see how these projects are moving along.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
We will reach out to your office.
Thank you. Let's see. We're moving right along. can we talk about the 10-year strategic plan for our seniors and what might be captured in that? As you were speaking earlier about the various conversations and the way that you are looking at capturing data, I was just thinking maybe one of the goals of the plan might be to compile all this data and again to update the survey that was done about 8 years ago, and so it can tell us how we're moving forward. And there are probably a couple of issues that the age-friendly committee could include in the survey, and maybe that could be a part of the 10-year plan to help inform us as to what can be our society for the future of seniors, given that so many are living much longer. I remember when I first proposed the elimination of property taxes for seniors, and I think I thought I was being reasonable, making it, I think it was like 80, and no, I was told no. If you don't move it to 70, there will be no resource for aging Black women because they are going to depart a little faster than other women. And so I learned an important lesson there. And what I'm really saying is, can we begin to look at what we want to examine about our aging population, or need to examine to see what kind of service delivery we should have as we think about what the plan might include. To me, we can't have a plan if we don't have some indicators from the community as to where we are and what the need might be into the future.
I agree with you.
Okay. All right. So when might you think you could start looking in earnest at this, the state plan? As you know, it is a requirement. I know that we didn't fund it in the current budget, but we certainly could have a one-time allocation given where things are, so that we could actually realize it sooner than later. How does that sound?
So I think it's worth a conversation about, the goals that were outlined in the legislation for the state plan, and whether a one-time allocation makes sense given those goals. And, DACL, of course, we're happy to always expand the universe of data. I think you and I both agree on that good data is invaluable to strategic planning. And so, I know there have been a lot of conversations and questions about that. And internally, we are working to improve our data, as you know, and we are working to leverage the data that's already out there, which includes working with DC Health on what they collect. They collect a wealth of information on key health indicators, demographics, and socioeconomic data. And so working on those things. I think if it's a matter of surveying seniors for specific insight on, specific topics, that you're right, that I think a partnership with Age Friendly makes a lot of sense. They've done surveys in the past, and I think they've been very successful in reaching to a broad community across the city. So absolutely, we'd be supportive of working with you and our partners, and expanding our universe of data, and getting more input from seniors on the specific elements that you might be interested in.
Okay, well, it just seems to me that's something that we should have conversations about now during this fiscal year so that we can actually have a plan in place for implementation in the new FY year. Without a doubt, I'm sure that the program can be funded. You know, as you said, it is a law. So, you know, we have the potential to come up with the funds that are necessary in order to execute this law. So I'd like to see us do that. In your response on question 78, you discussed having the 500 iPads to distribute to low-income seniors, focused primarily on combating isolation, but only 59 have been distributed. What's causing the delay? What's going on?
I think we've distributed more than that, but it definitely is true that we have not distributed as many as we had hoped at this point. We have distributed about 100 right now. We are working with a new provider on this program, so a lot of it was setting up to make sure that the program could be successful. And now that we are in the operational phase of this and actually distributing the iPads, we will very quickly see the distribution of the remaining iPads. But keeping in mind that we, from the beginning, when we created this program, we wanted to intentionally slow down the initial rollout to make sure that we had a system that was capable of providing the appropriate amount of support to seniors as they learn to use the technology. Because this program is not just about saying, you don't have technology, let us give you technology. This program is saying, we can connect you with the technology, and connection means more than just having something in your hand. It means making sure that you feel supported and not overwhelmed as you learn how to use this. And so this program is very hands-on in providing the senior not just with the technology, but also very significant support in saying, here's how you unbox it, here's what you can do with it, and then having constant tech support specifically for seniors, which I think is the really important part, to be able to walk seniors through and troubleshoot as they learn how to use the technology.
Okay, so we're at 100. We are fast approaching the second quarter of 4 quarters, yes. And we still have 400 to go. Will
yes,
we
and every rollout is bigger and bigger. So, you know, in the beginning, we handed out a small number just to see how the system would hold. And then, you know, every progressive every progressive phase has been bigger as we know the system can handle it. So we have 100 distributed, but we also, that doesn't include, I should say, the 50 that we gave out to VITA seniors at the very beginning of the fiscal year. So that was actually our initial rollout for those seniors. So total, we have about 150 already out in the community and being used.
Okay, so how will you measure success other than the number of units that or devices that are out? Will you measure, is there something in place that can measure usability, training, just trying to think quickly of some components that would be appropriate for, you know, this particular program. If it's designed to combat isolation, is there, as you call it, guidance? I call it mandate, but guidance. Is there guidance that stipulates the frequency of usage of the equipment, particular websites you must access or activities you would be engaged in? Is there for the user guidance on how they can report to your department that I used it for 3 hours today and here are the things I did? Or or is it determined in some other fashion?
No, we're looking at all those things. And so, one of the really important parts of this program is that we spent a lot of time on the front end. And so there's surveys and agreements before somebody even got a tablet. And then there will be subsequent surveys throughout the program to be able to evaluate, did usage actually increase? Did they use it in the ways that we thought that people would use it, and in what ways? So we'll have a lot of that data. We'll have data from our tech support team as well. And so that has been one of the most important things of the setup for this program, to ensure that we actually have data that will help us inform future programming.
Okay, and so the 50 that went to VITA are being used, are they being used at the VITA, or for those who were participants in the Adams Morgan location, or for those that they were picking up and, driving from their southeast, northeast homes to the Adams Morgan Center, or for one of the wellness centers?
So you raise a good question. VITA Senior Services provides services for seniors citywide, and they also operate housing in VITA Brightwood. So the tablets that we had were part of a larger program to connect all VITA seniors throughout the city with tablets at the, right at the beginning of this fiscal year. And so we are part of that expansion. It's not just for one location. It's for seniors who are citywide, to connect them with services.
Okay, yes, because the few times that I've been able to visit VITA Center in Adams Morgan, there have been easily 50 people there each and every time. Right. Sitting in the hallways. That program definitely is popular, has been popular, in fact, throughout my tenure on the council. And they are in great need of more space. I don't know if they've, talked with you extensively about it, but they really do need more space. When we return to, in-person activities, I'm pretty sure that they can use that. So anyway, I was just very curious when you said VITA, how they would possibly be using, the service. We talked a little bit about, we talked about the meals, and we talked about the money. I guess I have to come back to the meals program. If you recall, a few years ago, we had the LGBTQ community that had a facility at the Reeve Center that wanted a standalone feeding, opportunity. I know that we have a couple of senior housing developments now, and I wondered if what are the plans to assist those communities that are not really connected to have food?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and one that we are actively engaged in answering with the community. So I actually personally meet with the LGBTQ task force every other month. They meet on a regular basis without me too. And we have asked them what they would like to do, because we're not doing in person right now. So, you did allocate funds for a congregate site, and obviously, we had no idea that we wouldn't have a traditional congregate site, but they've come up with some really good ideas of how they would like to use those funds and still be able to connect over a meal. And so we'll be working with them to implement those ideas this fiscal year.
Okay, that sounds good. Let me just say that my first introduction to the local LGBT community was decades ago. And it was very active then. It has remained very active. It's a core population of activists in our city. And I just want to make sure that people who have stood the test of the District of Columbia long-term, make sure that, we're finally able to be responsive to their needs. So I appreciate that very much. The same as I appreciate, specialized housing, which has been sorely needed for many, many decades. So thank you for that. We talked about the safe at home. We're getting to the end, my goodness. Take a break. I think that your documentation, that the question answers that you sent back to us will tell us this, but are you seeing a tremendous increase in the request for services for like home repairs? I know we talked about the safe at home, and we talked about the single family to some degree, but are you getting a lot of calls and inquiries? Are your grantees speaking of the need for more housing facilities or housing issues, perhaps? Persons living in deteriorating housing and needing repairs, or problems with landlords trying to get repairs done?
I don't think so, but that might not be a specific category that we track independently. Landlord issues, we would generally refer to the Office of the Tenant Advocate. What I'll say is that it has not come to me as an issue. I speak with my teams frequently, including our information referral team that answers calls, and we, as well as the network, we have opportunities where I speak to the network on a regular basis. And one of the recurring questions that I have for our folks who directly interface with the community is asking, are you hearing questions, or are you hearing requests that are coming in that are different than maybe you have before? And that hasn't come up. Truthfully, this past year, a lot of it has just been about COVID-19 and isolation. So those are the two areas where I would say we certainly have seen a marked increase of concern from seniors and providers.
So you've not really heard from individual seniors or their families that are worried about evictions, as an example?
I will say that we do not generally get those kinds of requests.
Okay. Home share. Tell me how home share is becoming a topic in the senior population that you work with.
So I mean, this is interesting because obviously over the past year, a lot of things got paused. This is definitely one of those areas that got paused. The last event that I actually remember doing with the mayor had directed us to have community conversations around home share. And then, just anything in person. So, I think once we start really kind of reopening in a way that's significant with our community, home share will be at the top of the conversation list of, what are people actually interested in? What would make them comfortable in moving forward? This is a topic of conversation that's come up, of course, in Age Friendly, as you know, and a lot of cities are exploring home share as a way to keep people in their homes longer. The main concern that we have as an agency is just making sure that seniors are protected no matter what. So, we do have very strong tenant protections here in DC. And so, which I think is a great thing. And I want to make sure that seniors really understand the totality of their obligations when they enter into an agreement like home share, because that essentially means being a landlord. And so really understanding what that entails, I think, would be critical for me, and making sure our seniors are protected and go into something like this with full knowledge.
All right. And then I want to ask you about accessory dwelling units. Do you get inquiries from seniors trying to figure out how they can modify their premises so that they can have, the basement into an apartment, or maybe one of the bedrooms modified so that they can rent it out or lease it out?
We have not had a lot of those inquiries, but I know that has been a topic of conversation for you. And I believe you had you have legislation for the Department of Housing and Community Development. So we'd be happy to continue those conversations with the accessory units and any of those kinds of ways that seniors can explore possibilities of staying in their homes through kind of more creative means.
Okay. And lead agencies, do we still have, 5 or lead agencies, or how is the lead agency process working? Given that we've been virtual, given that so many of the programs are citywide, how does a lead agency work today? How will they work into the future, because things have really changed?
Yeah, I think those are really excellent questions. And we are exploring that with our lead agencies as we speak. Again, I think what the past year has taught us is that the models that we have all really been tied to really aren't necessarily what is going to be the best for our community moving forward. So, we had a regional based model. We have 4 lead agencies right now. Terrific is in wards 1, 2, and 4. Iona is in ward 3. Seabury Resources for the Aging is in wards 5 and 6. And East River Family Strengthening Collaborative is in wards 7 and 8. So we have a total of 4 lead agencies. And the idea with the lead agency model, which was in place well before I came in, was that community providers could build more trust and have more penetration within particular communities than maybe a government entity could. And so that really is the idea of a lead agency model, that, we want to make sure the community feels like they can have a reliable partner as they age. So while we have a ward-based approach in that way, the services are citywide. So case management is a service, whether you live in, Ward 3 or Ward 8, for example. It's just who provides it. One of the things that we've realized over the past year is that a lot of the services that we just assumed needed to be provided in person don't have to be. And so I think that creates some flexibility that we hadn't really been thinking about before. It also kind of gives us an opportunity to really reflect on the need for consistency and equity in our services, which is something that we've been talking about for a while, but I think this past year really threw into sharp relief. And so the conversations that we're having right now are really how can our core services adapt to what the current environment is, and how do we plan for the future? Because it's not, as I said in the testimony, it's not good enough just to revert back to the way things were before the pandemic. I don't think any of us would be satisfied with that. Our community deserves more. It deserves all of the creativity and resources that we can bring to bear to make sure people are being served and served well. So, that is an ongoing conversation. I'm not sure we're going to be able to answer it anytime soon, but our commitment is that we will continue pushing as an agency and with our lead agencies to ask, do we have the right model in place? Are we doing the best that we can do collectively together? So that includes DACL saying, are we being supportive enough? And on the lead agency side to say, are we providing the quality of services that we would be proud to provide to our moms and our grandmoms?
Thank you for that response. As it relates to the lead agencies, are you getting reports or information that indicates that the agency cannot keep up with the traffic, that is, with the number of individuals that want services that the lead agency specifically provides, or that they can't keep track of the data, because they have a tremendous increase, or that there are drop-offs in individuals who are getting service through the lead agency process?
Yes. Yes to all of those questions.
Okay.
Over the past year, we've seen so much, and we've had visibility, I think, into areas that maybe we didn't have as much visibility into. You did hear one lead agency in the public testimony say there's what we asked of our lead agencies was a lot. I'm not going to deny that. You talk to any member of my team, you talk to any one of our grantees, and they will tell you, I ask a lot. And I ask a lot because, again, that's what our community deserves. That's why we're all here. And so, when we think about what's possible, right? One of the things that, I know my team has really worked with the grantees on is, how can we adapt? Which is to say, I think that in the beginning, there was an assumption that we wanted our grantees to do what they had always done plus more. And that's not the case. It was really about adaptation. We can't do in-person services anymore. How can we still support you in providing services that our community desperately needs? And so, what I would focus on is the communication. So, it is true that we do ask for, high quality services. We ask for specific data entry. There are a lot of specific things that DACL asks for. And frankly, as a government entity, as a district resident, I am glad that DACL asks for so much, because I trust government to take care of the tax dollars in a prudent way. So that's part of our fiscal responsibility. And I think that, it is hard sometimes for grantees to come to us and say, hey, I'm not sure what you're asking for, or what you're asking for doesn't really make sense, or I'm not sure about our capacity to do what you're asking for. I think those are different questions, and that's a conversation. Candidly, I've been told that I might not be the easiest person to come to and have that kind of conversation. I can't imagine why, because I think we all share the goals. And that's why, again, we're in this field. Is I feel very fortunate that it is mission driven. And so for me, we let the mission drive this conversation. And so does that feel overwhelming sometimes? I'm sure it does. And look at what we've been able to accomplish over this past year. It's been incredible. And if you would have asked any of us, could you do this, right, before the pandemic hit? I don't think anyone would have said yes. And so we are all capable, so much more capable, I think, than what we think. And our system is so much more adaptable to what the community needs than we give it credit for. And so I would say that like change itself should not be looked upon as an increase of workload. That the change, while it can be scary and it can be intimidating, can sometimes lead us into something that makes more sense from a service delivery perspective and makes more sense for our seniors in the community.
So with regarding of this, I guess the programming that you have in mind as you were speaking, would you say that you need more lead agencies? Do we need to think about wards 1? I think you said 1, 2, and
4.
I'm sorry. Yeah, 1, 2, and 4. Maybe it's 1 and 2, and maybe 4 is a separate one or something like that. Maybe 5 and 6, is that too much of a workload? And I'm sure 7 and 8 is a big workload. I mean, are we thinking that we need to have maybe 7 or 8? One for each of the ward areas, or maybe you don't do wards because, with the redistricting, that's gonna ziggle zaggle. Maybe it's about population, where senior population is, and how do you allocate that? Because we know that we have a tremendous senior population in 3 and 4 and 5, less so in 8. Probably less so in 1.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to be more of our younger wards, and possibly less so in 2,
Right.
where the income is, different, but just wondered.
So what I'd say is that, DACL is less concerned about the structure itself as and more concerned with ensuring that no matter what the structure looks like, that we provide equitable and consistent quality of services no matter where you live. And so we have looked at different models. We've talked to our grantees about different models. And what I often say is there is no perfect solution, but we need to be clear-eyed about what the downsides might be to whatever path we take for the future, so that we can make sure that no matter what, we are equitable and consistent. Because I think that's really the key, and you'll hear the mayor talk about this quite a lot. How can we reopen in a more equitable way? And so it also matters how we talk about who we're trying to reach, right? So you're right. If we look at just pure numbers of seniors, we are looking at Ward 3, and close second would be Ward 4. But if we look at the number of seniors who are actually reaching out saying, hey, I need some assistance, we're not looking at those wards for the highest numbers. And so that's why data is so critical. That's why it's, we are really pushing to make sure that everyone is using our database of record in the same way, so that we can make these comparisons and we can shift and allocate as we need. So even with a terrific who's covering wards 1, 2, and 4, their staffing is appropriate for that region. And so, it's not as if Terrific and Iona and Seabury all have the same level of staffing. They don't. It really is based on what the region is and how many people they're getting in within their system. But then over the past year too, we've also really, I think, just started to understand the power that villages can bring into the conversation. And so a lot of these things, I think, this is a great opportunity for us to reflect and say, here we always thought a lead agency would have to do A, B, C, and D, right? But then kind of in the context of an emergency, we all had to chip in and do different things. So what does that mean for us moving forward? If we care about doing what's best for the community, then we have to be expansive about the possibilities. And that's exactly the part of the conversation that we're in. You know, the downside of villages is they're not everywhere, right? And so I can't rely on villages too much because then I have a big part of the city that's not covered. And so a lot of it is balancing the strengths of each of our grantees with the need of the community. And making sure that when we do that, we have the equity and consistency we're looking for.
Very good conversation with you on this matter. And I love the fact that you are bringing up the villages and what they do, which is also to look after our aging community. And of course, it's generated in a particular location, which is very similar to the work of the lead agencies. I think we should examine this further. Hope that you're willing to do that. Examine it to the extent of it, as you were saying, it could very well be that and this is just as an example, I'll take my ward. I live in 5. Okay. In Ward 5, we now have a village in Brooklyn. We don't have one down in my neighborhood, you know, in down here, but maybe we will. So you have one in Brooklyn, maybe you need one in Edgewood, maybe not, I don't know. Maybe you need one in Bloomingdale, you know, okay, closer to my neighborhood. But you probably could use one in Queens Chapel, okay? You know, a lot of elderly persons live there. I don't know. But my point is, we could have, and we could have one in Trinidad, definitely an older population. Some are still there, not many. But I think if we look at the villages from a neighborhood concept, which is the way it began on Capitol Hill and then expanded to like Cleveland Park and and other neighborhoods like that, Georgetown, I think that we could create a workable model where the villages are actually performing many of the services that the lead agencies are doing. They're doing it independently. Villages are independent. They're not a part of your, you know, your enterprise, so to speak. But I think we ought to look at how we can get, as you say, a big bang for the buck, and the buck ought to follow the bang, so to speak, as where we are trying to service our community. So I appreciate you having that discussion with me, and I hope that we can see that and realize that. When we talk about villages, when we talk about lead agencies, we're also talking about social workers and case management, and you know, because there is a part of the population that's aging that needs those very specific dimensions to service. And so I'm wondering, and I think they also need help with their financial matters. I know that Iona House has a literacy program that they do, financial literacy program. Well, it should not just be through Iona House and going to Ward 3, and I think they have a program over in parts of Ward 8. That should be a part of what we do. the same as the issue of Alzheimer's. These issues, transcend the entire city. And so I'm hoping that, we can put some thought as to how we can have that. Same as food and transportation. So how do we really get those kinds of programs, across the city? I think it would be very good. Leading me to adult protective services. How are we doing with that? That's now one of the big enterprises within your agency. How's that coming?
It's great. The APS came to us a couple years ago, and they have really integrated into our agency and provided, I think, the continuity of service provision that the mayor was hoping, by kind of connecting all of these pieces together for our vulnerable residents. Let me also take this as an opportunity to wish all of our social workers happy Social Workers Month. They do a lot of work that is challenging and just so necessary for people to live well. And so for my staff, and we fund a lot of social workers in the community as well, they do some really incredible work in connecting people with much needed services. So I want to take this opportunity to thank them and for the work that they do. As you know, APS is they investigate and they see some of, I think, the hardest things that anyone could see. We're talking about abuse, neglect of our seniors. And so, the staff who work there have incredible dedication to the work that they're doing, and real care and concern. One of the things that I'm really proud of is that that we are focused on outreach and better collaboration. So over the past couple of years, we've increased our collaboration with the Office of the Attorney General. They actually have a financial fraud and abuse unit where we support then bringing cases against people who are trying to take advantage of seniors in the community. We work with community nonprofits who are focused on violence intervention and prevention in this community. We work with our police department and making sure they know to call us if they see situations where we might need to go in and provide some interventions. So, I'm incredibly proud of the work that team has done, and the way that we have integrated our other teams and lines of work with APS to create a system where no senior gets lost in our system.
Thank you for that response. I have to ask you, you mentioned interventions, and I wondered what kind of interventions do you do as it relates to, or do you even know about situations where seniors are having mental health need? Does protective services step in, or how is that done? How are those situations? Are you aware of those situations? How are they handled?
Certainly, I think those are really challenging cases. Depending on the case, we might bring our partners in from the Department of Behavioral Health. It really depends on whether or not a person has capacity to make individual decisions. And so we work with psychologists on helping us determine, does a person have capacity to make decisions, making sure that we use all available resources. These are still adults we're talking about. And so we don't have the right to just come in and take custody of somebody. But we really work with kind of the model now is called supportive decision making. So we work with the person if they have capacity to help them make choices that would support their living and sustaining in the community, connect them to resources if they're not connected already. And, you know, really that's a lot of the cases that we see through APS are unfortunately seniors who are isolated or cut off from the rest of the community. And a lot of the work that the social workers do is to reintegrate them and connect them back to community supports.
Well, and I appreciate that response, and that certainly is the humane methodology. But I guess I'm concerned from the broader community perspective. When we have these situations, it seems like there is consultation or there's discussion, but we don't always get action that really decides an outcome of the situation. And these situations can perpetuate long term. I run across it a lot in discussions with housing, and of course, the understanding is you go back to how the individual got in the housing and who's responsible. And as you say, these are adults. And I just don't know. It just seems to me that if your office could take a look at what kind of protocols do we have in place when the situation involves an aging person. Seems to me as a government, we have some responsibility to at least indicate a preferred methodology for handling the situation. And since Adult Protective Services is directly in your agency, I would love to understand how we can get to a protocol that, has that person who is in stress removed from the stressful situation or calmed in the stressful situation so that they can get back to having a quality life. So I think that's an area I would love to see us embrace that, because it's going to continue more and more. As we live longer, that means that more of us have more of us impacting the general population. And so what are we going to do to help?
Yeah, and I think the situation that you raised are really some of the more challenging situations that this team sees. So there are a couple reasons why it's so challenging. One is because APS investigations are generally confidential. So unless we have the consent of the adult, in the investigation, we do not legislatively have the authority to share information that, often the community member who called the case in or alerted us to it is asking for. So the confidentiality is, I want people to understand that that's a protective piece that is actually in law that makes it challenging to kind of talk about. I think the other thing is, we coordinate with a lot of partners, and that really is because, as you say, it's important to stabilize the situation and kind of reintegrate the person within the community. I think there are certain situations where people call in cases because they don't like the decisions that are being made by the senior adult in the house, or whatever the case might be. And so we do have to remind people that there is a very specific legal standard for capacity, and the legal standard does not care whether or not the decision is good, quote unquote good. The legal standard is the legal standard. And so when we're dealing with adults, if they have capacity to make decisions, there's very little intervention that APS can actually do in those situations if the person is not interested in the intervention. If the person does not have legal capacity, then we will assist in going to court and helping and asking the court to appoint a guardian or conservator, depending on what that situation is. And so then we can be more active. So, these cases can range in complexity, but what I will say is each of these cases can be heartbreaking, can be challenging. And I say that not as a director of the Department of Aging and Community Living. I say that as a resident of DC who doesn't want to see neighbors in situations that look really bad from the outside. I say that as a daughter who would certainly want to be notified if something was happening to my parents that seemed suspicious. All of those ways in which I think these can become very high profile and highly emotional cases. And what I'll say is that, I think we spent a lot of time over the past couple of years and really coming up with a system where we feel comfortable that we have a lot of different decision makers in the process about whether or not this is an APS case, whether or not we should investigate this case, whether or not the case should be closed or transferred somewhere else, and what kind of community supports need to be brought in. So that, as far as the system goes, I think is the best that we can do to ensure that no one person is making a decision on these very complex cases, and that we're constantly checking ourselves and making sure that we're doing the right thing as best we can as a government entity.
Okay, I hear you. I appreciate that, and it is very, very complex. Just wanted to make sure I covered most of the boardwalk here. You have indicated a couple of times today that your agency does a lot of referring seniors who are looking for a particular, service to other parts of the government. Do you track that? Do you keep a record of referrals to, let's say, housing, referrals to health, referral to the energy department, let's say for maybe eradication? I think they do the eradication of mold and the weatherization. Do you keep those kind of records?
So what we track is like the total number of referrals that we're making out.
Okay.
Total number of calls that are coming to us for specific pieces of information, but not and we've been experimenting with this over the course of the past year. What the team will tell me is, Laura, if we track every piece of information that you ask from us over the course of the year, the list would be too overwhelming to actually use in a call context. And so we've been going back and forth and working on what is the best kind of way that we can track these things that's meaningful, but still tells us a little bit more information than we currently have.
Okay, well, I hope you'll look at that, and when we are talking the budget, you'll be able to inform me about some of those categories, particularly the key categories that everyone seems to be concerned with, even if it's an education issue and it's a grandparent having a concern about, the school or virtual learning, or, I don't want my grandson going back and because if that teacher smacks him, or, whatever the issue may be, or, the learning difficulty. I just think it's very worthwhile to understand what are some of the categories that continually are challenging to our person 60 and older. What is the requirement for the staff at your agency and staff at the various grantees that work with seniors as it relates to vaccinations and mask wearing and social distancing. I'm thinking home care aides as well. Those persons that actually are still seeing our senior population. Do we have any particular guidance for that or?
Yeah, so, I will say that as a district resident, I love having Dr. Nesbitt be the district's doctor. We've had a lot of conversations with her and her team over the past year. We follow that guidance very carefully, and DC Health works with us to create specific guidance around some of our programs if they didn't already have it. Regarding vaccination, we do not require people to have vaccines. That is following DC Health guidance, but we do strongly encourage it within our teams. So whether that's internal or external, what we do require is masking, social distancing, and good hygiene. So we require that of all of our staff who do in-person visits. If in-person programming is provided, there is specific protocol involved for every specific in-person service. So we've been very careful about making sure we are walking in lockstep with the best health guidance that we have at any given time, and making sure our staff are fully trained and knowledgeable of all the requirements. I mean, we have requirements even for people coming to the office just to pick things up of, what needs to happen, who needs to be notified, et cetera. So yes, we are very, very concerned about making sure that no matter what the in-person interaction, that our seniors are safe.
Okay, one last question, a fun one. You have a new gift card program, and tell us what it does and how do people become eligible, and I guess what's the value of each card, or does it change?
So this gift card program is really, it's not open to the general public. What it is a program of last resort for immediate supportive assistance. So that means it could be an APS client, it could be one of our case management clients, and the dollar amount depends on what that situation is. But I really want to stress that it is a program of last resort. So when all other potential paths for support have been exhausted, then we can say, okay, if this is the one thing that's going to keep the person in the community or keep the person safe or keeps the person fed, then we want to make sure to be able to do that. Honestly, this is something that I will say that our social workers made happen because they were seeing situations where for relatively small sums of money, people were being put in very precarious situations. And so, they advocated for something that could be flexible enough to help seniors in real life situations. And they really are like one-time funds. And so we are tracking that. I think so far it's been very well received. And we have a lot of this has been about food for when APS gets a call if a senior doesn't have food in the house, for example. So those are the types of situations that we use that for.
Okay, and so what are the usual monetary value of these? Is it $50, $500, $5,000?
So the gift cards themselves, we don't just hand a gift card to somebody. We have a very strict policy in place where there is an accounting to the penny. So our social workers can use the gift cards, but and they are in like $25, $50, $100 values, but you might not use the whole gift card for the specific interaction. It really is for whatever is needed at that time.
Very good. I customarily receive gift cards at during the holiday seasons and distribute them to seniors that you can see in person, okay? And so I'm sure that there are many other people who would like to help you. So if anyone wanted to bring you a box of 500 gift cards valued at $50 each, what can they do? How do they reach you to say, I have some help coming?
So certainly you could give us a call, reach out to me, or I'm sure they could even reach out to you. And, we are always, available if somebody is interested in helping us. We had people who were making masks in the very beginning of the pandemic, right, and wanted to donate them, and we connected them to a nonprofit we work with. So, definitely I'd say reach out to us and talk to us about what you'd like to do. There are so many needs that we are seeing in our community. And even if we don't have a specific program set up for it, that we work with so many community partners who are doing such incredible work that we really have spent a lot of time over this past year connecting our community members to the greater community involved in providing supportive services.
Okay, so if anyone wanted to get gift cards to you, which sounds like a reliable way to assist, or if they wanted to, can they give you a donation for food? I don't know how you would do your food. How do you do the food?
So, yeah,
the meals.
Donations for us specifically as a government entity, I think can get a little tricky. And there are good reasons for that. So I don't want to criticize that process, but certainly the nonprofits we work with, they take donations of food specifically. So, if people are cleaning out their pantry or go to the grocery store and buying a little bit of extra and would like to, be able to give that away, we can connect them with a nonprofit in their community doing that kind of work. Direct cash donations, depending on what it's for, it can come to us, again, with proper paperwork, or through a nonprofit, and you can usually say what it is that you want that to be used for. I think all the nonprofits we work with have some sort of gift card program to help seniors in need. So that would be another way to do it. And so I think there are a lot of options, and depending on what somebody is interested in, we can certainly help connect to a resolution that would make the most sense.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I had no idea we would chat for a whole, I would say 2.5 hours. But I appreciate your steadfastness and your answers. There are many more questions, as you can imagine. So you may get some follow-up just before we go into the budget season. But I thank you very much for your responses today. And is there anything that you would like to close with?
No, thank you for your time and always for your interest and support. I think the community is very fortunate to have you as a champion, and we are happy to respond to any questions that you or the community might have, and really open to talking about how we can do even more, be even better as we move forward and think about how we can reopen more equitably and stronger together.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you to the audience that's listening. This concludes this portion of today's hearing. We are going to take a quick break. I see Mr. Uperlari up there reminding me. And so we'll take a break and come back at, we'll be back at 5 after 3 p.m. Is that good? Okay. And thank you again.
Thank you.
So we'll recess until 3:05 p.m.
Hi, Director Donaldson. This is Sam with the committee staff. Oh, do you have any staff? I know your
Yeah,
staff.
Drew Hubbard and Sheila Miller will be on. We're all here at the office, so let me just let them know they should join the Zoom call. They should be on, actually.
I don't see them quite yet, but as soon as they get on, I'm happy to promote them.
Okay, let me go check. Hey, Drew and Sheila, Sam wants to put you on as panelists.
Sam, did you get a little lunch?
I had some breakfast, luckily, so.
Okay, okay, all right, okay. We got through quite a few questions.
We did. That was a good conversation.
Mhm. Now the biggie comes up.
Yep, we should have a few of your colleagues joining us shortly.
I'm pretty sure.
Councilmember, we're still recording, and I believe we're airing on.
No, Ron, we're not recording, and the YouTube stream is
It
paused.
says live.
Paused.
Yeah,
Live on YouTube.
I paused the YouTube stream.
What about the channel 13?
I'm not sure.
I think we're still hot mics on channel 13, live mics on channel 13, which is fine,
Okay.
but just letting everybody know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
They're
Yeah, hi,
joining.
this is Mitch from Cable. Your mics are off and they've been off, so you don't have to worry about that.
Great. Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch.